The HOA fined me $85,000 for damage they caused, and they thought I'd pay it quietly. They thought I'd fold, but they made one mistake. I had proof, and I was done being polite. My grandfather built that bridge with his bare hands so our family could survive out here. It wasn't just wood and steel, it was our lifeline. But one HOA president saw it as a shortcut. And what she did next turned my quiet life into a legal nightmare. My name is Daniel Harper, and Willow Creek, Colorado is the first place I ever called home. Not just on paper, in my bones. This town is where my childhood happened, where the air still smells like pine after a storm, where the mornings are quiet enough to hear your own thoughts, and where my family built a life from nothing but grit, stubborn hope, and two hands that refused to quit. But Willow Creek has changed, and so have the people living in it. See, back in 1970, my grandfather came here with my grandma and their kids, chasing a simple dreamland they could call their own. He scraped together everything he had and bought a big stretch of property just outside town. Beautiful land. Wide open. Peaceful. Only one problem. There was no proper road leading to it. A river cut straight through the area like a knife, splitting the land from the town. The only way across was an old wooden bridge locals had thrown together years before. Wobbly planks, missing boards, nails sticking up like teeth. The kind of bridge people crossed with their windows down, because if you heard the wood crack, you wanted to be able to jump. That bridge wasn't public. There were no permits, no safety checks, no guarantees, just a prayer and luck. And for a while, that was enough. Grandpa didn't complain. He didn't demand help. He didn't go crying to the county. He did what Harpers always did. He worked. For years, he saved every dollar he could, took extra jobs, fixed machinery for people who couldn't afford a mechanic, hauled lumber, cleared brush, dug trenches, whatever put food on the table and moved the dream forward. Then, when he finally had enough, he did it the right way. He went through the proper government channels, got the official permission, filled out the paperwork, paid the fees, and then he built something that would outlive him, a real bridge. Solid supports, reinforced beams, proper concrete footings, heavy-duty steel joints. The kind of bridge you could drive across without your stomach twisting. When it was finished, he put up signs on both ends, bold, clear, impossible to ignore, Privet Bridge, max, load 20 tons. That sign wasn't there to be rude. It was there to protect what he built. Because that bridge wasn't just wood and steel. It was the difference between having land and being trapped on the wrong side of a river. It was our family's only access. Our lifeline. The result of years of sacrifice, sweat, bruises, sleepless nights, and a stubborn old man who refused to let the river win. For decades, things were simple. People used the bridge sometimes. Locals in small trucks, delivery vans, neighbors heading out to fish or hike, normal traffic. And honestly, I never cared. If someone needed to cross, fine. As long as they respected the sign and didn't do anything stupid, I didn't see the harm. In fact, I liked the idea that my grandfather's bridge helped people, that something he built with his own hands made life easier for the community. Then came the new developments, the shiny homes, the manicured lawns, the exclusive neighborhood signs, and, eventually, the HOA. Willow Creek started filling up with people who loved rules more than they loved neighbors. The kind of folks who didn't wave hello but did take pictures if your trash can was visible from the street. At first, the HOA didn't bother me. They were on the other side of town, running their little kingdom behind perfectly trimmed bushes. But then they discovered something. A shortcut, a private bridge that shaved 15 minutes off their drive. And suddenly, my grandfather's bridge stopped being Daniel's family property and started being treated like it belonged to everyone. More cars, more trucks, more traffic. Still, I stayed quiet, because I'm not the type to pick fights for no reason. But the bridge wasn't built for everything, and one afternoon, standing near the river, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Deep grooves in the wood, fresh cracks near the supports, tire marks wider than they should have been. Someone had taken something heavy across, something that didn't belong there. I checked the sign again like I needed to remind myself it wasn't a dream. Max load 20 tons. And right then, I felt it, that shift. That tiny crack in the foundation of peace. Because I knew what happens when people get comfortable using something they didn't pay for. First, they use it. Then, they expect it. Then, they demand it. And if you ever try to take it back, they act like you are the villain. I didn't know it yet, but that bridge was about to become the center of a war I never asked for. A war that would drag my family's name through the dirt. A war that would pit me against people with money, lawyers, and an HOA board that believed rules were only for everyone else. And when it was over, Willow Creek would never look at me the same again. Because that bridge, the one my grandfather built with pride, would soon become the reason everything changed. For years, that bridge was nothing but a quiet part of life. Locals crossed it when they needed to. A couple HOA residents used it now and then. Everyone treated it with basic respect, slow speed, light vehicles, no drama, and I never complained. Honestly, I barely thought about it anymore. But that peace didn't last. Because one day, the HOA announced something that made my blood run cold, a modern townhouse development, planned just beyond my land on the far side of the river. They pitched it like it was progress, like it was some gift to the town, new families, new investment, new community standards. But I saw what it really meant. More people, more traffic, more control. And then came the part that changed everything. Instead of using the approved public access road, the longer route that wrapped around the hills like it was supposed to, they decided to use my bridge. My private bridge, the one my grandfather built. Because to them, it wasn't private property. It was a shortcut. At first, it looked harmless. A couple pickup trucks, some work vans, guys in hard hats with clipboards and coffee cups. Annoying, sure, but still within reason. Then the equipment arrived, and everything escalated fast. One morning, I stepped outside and heard a sound that didn't belong out here. A deep metallic groan, then a low rumble that made the ground feel wrong. I walked toward the river and saw it. A massive flatbed rolling across the bridge like it owned the place, tires as tall as my chest, steel beams stacked like bones. Behind it, a dump truck, then another, then a concrete mixer with a barrel spinning like it was mocking me. And every single time one of those monsters hit the bridge, the whole thing shuddered, not a little shake. A deep, violent vibration like the bridge was holding its breath and praying it didn't snap. I just stood there watching, stunned, as they rolled right past the warning sign. PRIV8 bridge, max load 20 tons. Like it wasn't even real. Like my grandfather's rules were just decoration. That's when I snapped out of it and did what any reasonable person would do. I tried to handle it like an adult. I contacted the HOA immediately. Emails first. Polite, firm, clear. Then phone calls when they ignored me. Then I showed up in person when they still didn't respond. I told them exactly what I told everyone. This bridge is private property. It has a legal weight restriction. It is not a construction route. And every time, I got the same smile. The same fake concern. The same dismissive, rehearsed answer. It's temporary, Daniel. Construction will be over soon. Temporary. Like bridges magically heal themselves after being crushed. Like my family's property was some disposable tool they could borrow until they were done. Temporary for them. But for me, every day it got worse. I could hear the wood groan under the tires. I could feel the bridge tremble from my porch when a truck hit the midpoint. And once you notice that kind of strain, you can't unsee it. Small cracks turned into long ones. Fresh dents appeared in places that had been smooth for decades. Bolts looked loosened. Boards shifted slightly. It was like watching someone slowly bend a family heirloom until it broke. And what made it even worse, they weren't choosing my bridge because it was safer. They weren't choosing it because it was legal. They were choosing it because it was convenient, because it saved them time, saved them fuel, saved them money. And I was about to learn something ugly about HOA people with money and power. Convenience matters more to them than respect, more than the law, more than someone else's hard work. And the scariest part, they weren't acting like they were getting away with something. They were acting like they were entitled to it, like they'd already decided my bridge belonged to them, and I was just the stubborn little problem standing in the way. But I wasn't going to stay quiet, not this time. Because if that bridge failed, it wouldn't just be property damage, it would be a disaster. And the people responsible would just shrug and say, well, it was old anyway. That's when I realized something. They weren't going to stop unless I forced them to. Kind that whispers, one more hit and I'm done. And I knew right then I couldn't ignore it anymore, so I stopped being polite. I sent the HOA a formal written notice, not a complaint. A warning, official, direct, documented. I told them the bridge was private property. I reminded them the maximum load restriction wasn't a suggestion, and I made it crystal clear if those trucks didn't stop, the bridge would become a public safety hazard. Then I did something I didn't want to do, but I knew I had to. I started building a paper trail so airtight they couldn't wiggle out of it. I documented everything. TA photos of the fresh damage. W video of overweight trucks crossing day after day. W copies of every email. Every ignored message. Every attempt I made to handle things peacefully. I even wrote down the dates and times like I was building a murder case, because in a way, I was. I wasn't emotional when I wrote it. I wasn't loud. I didn't rant. I stayed calm. Patient, professional. Professional. The kind of patience that scares bullies because it means you're not bluffing. And what did the HOA do after receiving my warning? They ignored me, like I was a fly buzzing around their important plans. But worse than that, they got bolder. Instead of slowing down, construction traffic actually increased. More trucks, heavier loads, earlier mornings, late nights. It became non-stop, like they wanted the bridge to fail, like they wanted the damage to become permanent so they could claim it was always unsafe. That's when I started preparing for court, not revenge, not drama, justice. I organized every photo, every video, every email into neat folders. I printed copies. I made backups. I even labeled flash drives. I didn't want to win. I wanted the truth documented so clearly that no one could twist it. And then, the very next morning, something happened I did not expect. I woke up early before sunrise to a low hum in the air. At first, I thought it was construction again. But when I stepped outside, I froze. There were vehicles parked near the bridge. Several of them. A group of people stood near the entrance wearing safety vests and holding clipboards. And not just random workers, HOA representatives, engineers, county-looking officials. And above them, a drone, floating there, silent and steady, like an eye in the sky. They surrounded the bridge like it was a crime scene, measuring, photographing, recording, taking notes. For a moment, I felt relief. I actually thought maybe my warning worked. Maybe this was finally the HOA taking responsibility. Maybe someone had finally listened. I stood there watching them inspect my grandfather's bridge with surgical precision, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But then I noticed something that wiped the relief right off my face. They weren't taking photos of the trucks. They weren't documenting their construction route. They weren't recording the weight violations. They were focusing on the bridge itself. Like the bridge was the problem. Like the bridge was guilty. And in that moment, a cold thought hit me. This inspection wasn't here to protect the truth. It was here to bury it. Because when people abuse power, they don't panic when you speak up. They just try to turn your own evidence into a weapon against you. They assumed I'd stay quiet. They assumed I'd back down. They assumed I didn't have the money, the energy, or the courage to fight. And they were dead wrong. By the time the bridge was officially shut down, the damage was already done. Not just to the wood, not just to the beams, to the entire area. Because once that bridge closed, everything on the far side of the river froze overnight. People couldn't get to work on time. School runs turned into hour-long detours. Deliveries stopped completely. No packages. No groceries. No contractors. Even emergency access became a serious concern, and the same HOA board members who'd been brushing me off for months suddenly started acting like the world was ending. Funny how that works. When I begged them to stop, it was temporary. But when they couldn't get what they wanted, it was suddenly a crisis. A public outrage. A disaster. And somehow, they still tried to make it my fault. That's when I filed the case. Not out of spite, not because I wanted attention. I did it because I was done being treated like the villain for protecting what my family built. Court day came faster than I expected. And walking into that courtroom, I remember thinking this is where truth either wins or gets buried under money and arrogance. Karen arrived like she owned the building. Not an ounce of fear on her face. Chin up. Shoulders back. That cold, polished confidence people get when they've steamrolled others for so long, they forget what consequences feel like. She didn't look at me like an equal. She looked at me like a nuisance. Like I was something she expected to erase. Her lawyers went first. They laid out photos of the bridge like it was a horror story. Cracks. Warping. Damaged boards. Close-ups designed to shock the judge and stir up emotion. Then came an engineer's report claiming the bridge was old, unsafe, and a danger to the public. Their argument was simple. They said I was irresponsible, that I knowingly allowed an unsafe structure to stay open, that I had put people at risk. And when Karen spoke, she didn't sound concerned. She sounded proud. Like she thought this was the moment I finally broke. Then it was my turn. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue emotionally. I didn't give them an angry outburst they could twist and use against me. I just stood up and presented the truth. Timestamp videos of overweight construction trucks crossing the bridge every day. Clear shots of the load limit sign reading, "Pivot Bridge, max load 20 tons," ignored again and again. Copies of every written warning I sent to the HOA. Proof they responded with the same excuse every time: it's temporary. Independent engineering reports showing the bridge was safe before their construction traffic started. And finally, proof that the route they chose wasn't legal or safer, it was just convenient. The courtroom changed the second I finished. You could feel it in the air. That shift that happens when people realize they've been fed a lie. Karen's confidence didn't disappear all at once. It cracked. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes narrowed, and for the first time, she looked uncertain. Because she finally understood something. I wasn't just some quiet landowner. I came prepared, and I had evidence she couldn't talk her way out of. The judge didn't hesitate. The ruling came down clear. The fine against me was dismissed completely. Then the judge placed full responsibility on the HOA and on Karen herself. They were ordered to pay for all damages, rebuild the bridge at their own expense, and acknowledge in writing that it was permanently private property. But it didn't end there. Because this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was abuse of authority, property damage, false accusations, and a misuse of power that could have gotten someone seriously hurt. Karen didn't just lose the case, she lost everything. Her position, her job, her reputation, and she was sentenced to 6 months in jail. When the gavel came down, I thought I'd feel victory, but what I felt was stronger than that. Relief, because power can intimidate. Money can delay justice, but truth, backed by evidence, always wins. And that bridge? It still stands today. Not just repaired, stronger than it ever was. The same way my grandfather was, the same way I had to become. If you enjoyed watching this HOA finally get what they deserved, hit the like button to support the channel. And subscribe with notifications on, because I've got more HOA revenge stories coming, and the next one is even crazier.